Rain makes a courthouse sound older than it is. That morning before sunrise, my chambers smelled like wet wool and paper. I remember the weight of the file before I remember the names. Some files feel cold. This one felt lonely. Stay with me for this one. I've learned some wounds never make a sound, but you can hear them if you listen long enough. I'm Judge Samuel Whitaker. I've sat on the bench for 34 years. I've heard lies dressed as truth. I've heard truth barely able to stand. Outside, November rain dragged across the windows like a tired hand. The sky was the color of old tin. People came in with their shoulders raised against the wind. Even the bailiff spoke softer than usual. The courtroom itself was plain and worn, oak benches, scuffed rail, brass dulled by years of fingers. A flag in the corner barely moved in the vent's weak breath. The clock above me sounded louder than it should have. The smell in that room was old polish and wet coats. A deputy near the back rubbed his hands for warmth. The clerk kept straightening the same stack of papers. Even the light seemed slow to wake up that day. On my bench sat a file thick as a family Bible. Inside it were receipts, letters, sworn statements, and one faded photograph. The first page claimed a young woman owed $247,913. It also claimed she might lose the house her mother died in. That number didn't belong to some rich estate. It belonged to a narrow blue house with peeling porch paint. It belonged to a life insurance payment. It belonged to one daughter who had buried her mother 6 weeks earlier. The lawyer for the county was already there. So was the man who had started the whole fight. He sat near the aisle in a pressed gray coat. He looked like someone arriving for lunch, not judgment. I watched the door while the clerk arranged the exhibits. Rain tapped the glass behind the jury box. A heater clicked and failed to warm the room. I had the feeling that door was about to let in more than a person. There are days when a courtroom feels like a machine. Stamp the paper, read the dates, move the money. That morning it felt like a memory was on trial. And memory does not fit neatly into folders. I could feel the people waiting before the hearing began. A widow in the second row held a tissue but never used it. A young officer kept checking the rain on his sleeves. Everyone seemed to know something heavy was coming. When Leah Bennett walked in, she didn't look up first. She looked at the floor, then the rail, then the empty space beside counsel table. Only then did she look toward me. People who expect kindness usually lift their eyes sooner. Her coat was brown once, maybe. Rain had darkened the shoulders almost black. One cuff was shiny from wear. The zipper pulled sideways because the fabric had twisted with age. Her shoes were clean but tired. The left sole bent outward near the toe. She walked carefully like someone saving pain for later, not limping, just protecting herself from one more thing. She carried a canvas grocery bag instead of a purse. The straps had stretched thin. Inside, I saw a folder, a pill bottle, and a lunch container. That told me more than any opening statement could. Her hands stayed wrapped around that bag. The knuckles were red from cold. Her nails were cut short, not for style, but for work. One thumb had a fresh split near the nail bed. Leah's face was younger than the file had made me expect. 26, maybe 27, but grief had taken the roundness from her cheeks. It had drawn 2 quiet lines from nose to mouth. Her eyes were the part I remember best, not because they were dramatic, because they looked used up, like they had done too much watching from hospital chairs. There was a pale mark on her ring finger, not from marriage, from some cheap metal band worn so long it had left a memory. People in hard seasons keep small things until they disappear. Karen Doyle stood when I took the bench. She was the county's estate lawyer. That meant she spoke for the public office handling disputed property. She trusted documents because documents had never failed her personally. Ms. Doyle dressed with exactness. Dark navy suit, flat black shoes, silver watch set to the second. Her hair was pinned so neatly it looked careful even from far away. She wasn't cruel. She was certain. Thomas Bennett sat 2 seats behind her, Leah's father. He was broader than Leah, with a clean shave and polished boots. His coat still held the store fold at the shoulders. He kept one ankle over the opposite knee, a man at ease. On the seat beside him sat nothing. No coat, no papers, no flowers, no memory. His hands bothered me most. They were soft-looking, with trimmed nails and no tremor at all. He rested them on his knee like this was familiar ground, like grief belonged to other people. Ms. Doyle began with the numbers. She said Leah had withdrawn $19,402 after Anna Bennett died. She said Leah had changed utility accounts, paid funeral expenses, and locked the surviving spouse out. She said Leah failed to wait for court approval. Then came the rest. A life insurance payment of $180,000, a house appraised at $212,000, a truck sold for $4,800. To Ms. Doyle, it added up cleanly. She said Thomas Bennett remained Anna's legal husband. The divorce had never been finalized. That meant he could claim a share unless the court found a lawful reason otherwise. She said feelings could not cancel written status. She said it calmly, no sneer, no flourish, just dates, transfers, signatures, and account activity. The kind of argument that sounds strong because it is organized. I let her finish. Then I looked at Leah. She had not interrupted once. She had only tightened her grip on that grocery bag until her fingers turned white. "Ms. Bennett," I said, "why did you touch that money so quickly?" Her throat moved before her voice did. She set the bag down with both hands. When she answered, she sounded like she was afraid of taking up space. "My mother died on a Tuesday," she said. "The funeral home wanted payment by Friday. The mortgage was due the same week. I paid what had to be paid." She paused after that. Not for effect, to breathe. I've seen many people cry in court, but I pay close attention to the ones fighting not to. "She had ovarian cancer," Leah said. "She was sick for 14 months. I worked nights at the grocery store and slept in a chair by her bed. There wasn't anyone else." I asked where her father had been. Leah looked toward Thomas only once. It was quick, like touching a hot pan. "Gone," she said, "since I was 7. That word hung in the room harder than a speech would have. Gone. Not dead, not missing, just absent, which can hurt longer. A cough started somewhere in the gallery and stopped fast. The court reporter glanced up, then back down. Even Ms. Doyle lowered her eyes to her notes. Some truths make professionals look away for a second. Leah swallowed and went on. "He missed my 8th birthday. He missed everyone after that. He missed middle school graduation, high school graduation, and every Christmas morning my mom kept hoping." Then she added the part that made the room colder. "My mother still set a plate for him some Thanksgivings," she said. "Not because she was foolish, because hope can make a smart person do tender things." No one wrote that down, but everyone heard it. Have you ever seen a quiet person carry a whole history in one breath? Have you ever watched a room realize the file was missing the human part? That's what happened right there. I asked Leah how she knew he had truly stayed away. She bent and pulled a rubber-banded stack from her grocery bag. Birthday cards came first, not opened cards, returned ones. Each envelope had a sticker from the post office, moved, unclaimed, refused. Then came invitations to school plays, choir concerts, and graduations. Anna Bennett had mailed them anyway, year after year. One envelope held glitter from a childhood card. A tiny gold star slid onto counsel table when Leah opened it. She brushed it aside with one finger and kept talking. That small motion said more than anger could have. There were also printed photos. Leah in a paper crown at age 9. Leah with braces and a clarinet. Leah in a red graduation gown, smiling too wide like her mother had told her to. Tucked behind the photos were green return slips, certified mail receipts. That means the mail required a signature. Thomas Bennett had signed for 3 of them at the same trucking office over 4 years. I asked Ms. Doyle if she had seen those. She said they were attached late. She had reviewed them, but they did not change legal status. There it was again, status over story. Then I noticed a transcript clipped near the back. A voicemail, time-stamped at 8:41 p.m. Anna Bennett had been pronounced dead at 8:02. I asked Leah whose recording it was. She closed her eyes before answering. "My phone," she said. "He called 39 minutes after my mother died. He hadn't called in 6 years before that." The heater clicked again, then fell quiet. I asked the clerk to play it. The room filled with static first. Then a man's voice, casual and impatient. Thomas Bennett's own voice. "Leah, it's your dad," the message said. "I heard about your mom. Don't sign anything till I see the policy. Call me back before anybody buries her." No one moved for a moment, not even Thomas. The words were ugly in their plainness. He hadn't asked how Anna died or whether Leah was alone. I have heard threats, curses, and practiced lies. That message was worse because it sounded ordinary. Greed often enters a room in a calm voice. That is why people miss it until damage is done. Leah did not cry. She pressed both palms flat against counsel table. That's what broke my heart. Some people have learned tears only make things messier. I turned back to Ms. Doyle. "Counselor," I said, "did you review the insurance form?" She said yes. The named beneficiary was Leah Bennett alone. A beneficiary is the person chosen to receive the money. That kind of money usually goes straight to that person. It does not wait in the pile of things others can claim. Ms. Doyle knew that. "Then why," I asked, "is that payment listed as if it belonged to Mr. Bennett?" She said the larger dispute involved the house, the truck, and possible reimbursement issues. She said Leah's quick transfers suggested concealment, a hidden move. That was her word. Concealment is a fancy word for hiding. Sometimes it means theft. Sometimes it means panic. Courts are supposed to know the difference. I asked for the house records. The clerk handed me a cracked manila envelope. Rain still tapped the windows while paper whispered under my hands. That room had become so still I could hear people breathing. Inside was a quitclaim deed from 18 years earlier. That is a paper giving up ownership. Thomas Bennett had signed it before a notary. His name had been removed from the house long ago. Behind it sat one more document, a waiver. That means he gave up a future claim in writing. His signature matched the one on the certified mail slips. The paper was part of an old separation agreement. Anna kept the house. Any death benefit, insurance money, or savings in her sole name stayed hers. Thomas Bennett would claim none of it later. There was one sentence under the signature that stayed with me. It said both parties entered the agreement freely, no pressure, no confusion, no missing pages. The man had known exactly what he gave up. Ms. Doyle stepped forward and asked to inspect it again. I watched her face while she read. Her certainty did not shatter all at once. It loosened line by line. There was even a refinance packet attached. A bank clerk had copied the waiver years ago when Anna refinanced. The copy bore the same date and stamp. This was not some kitchen table trick. Then Leah pulled out one final piece, a photograph from Anna's hospital room. On the tray table sat the same envelope, already labeled for Leah. The phone screen in the photo showed the date. Anna looked thin enough to blow away, but her chin was lifted. Even from a photograph, you could see a mother trying to leave order behind, trying to protect her child one last time. Mom kept everything together, Leah said. She was scared he'd come when he heard there was money. So she labeled the packet. Her voice stayed small. The truth did not. Don't leave me now. This is the part where a courthouse can become a blade or a bridge. Ms. Doyle tried once more to steady the room. She said procedure still mattered. Leah had paid bills before formal approval. Leah had sold the truck too quickly. She was right about one thing. Rules matter. Without rules, strong people take whatever they want. But rules are not blindfolds we tie over common sense. I asked Leah for the receipts. She handed them over in order. Funeral home, hospice copay, mortgage, electric bill, water bill, burial clothes, not a salon charge, not a vacation, not one careless thing. There was also a notebook in Anna's handwriting, blue ink, trembling letters near the end. Leah paid every night bill, one line read. Leah fed me soup with a straw when I could not swallow. That notebook was not a will. It did not need to be. It was a map of labor. It showed who had carried the weight while others stayed light. Ms. Doyle said late filing still disrupted the office. I agreed. But disruption is not dishonesty. A daughter burying her mother is not a thief because she paid the funeral home. Then Thomas finally spoke. He said Anna had kept him away. He said he meant to come back when things settled down. He said nobody had told him it was that bad. I asked him what Leah's middle school mascot was. He stared at me. I asked what Anna did for work before she got sick. He could not answer that either. I held up the certified slips, then the graduation photos, then the voicemail transcript. You were told, I said, you just did not come. No one clapped. This was not a movie. But the silence changed shape. It stopped protecting Thomas Bennett. I leaned forward and folded my hands. Law should not reward abandonment, I said, not by accident, not because a file was read too fast. The words landed harder because I kept my voice low. Then I gave the ruling, slowly, so every person in that room could hear where justice was stepping. The gavel rested near my right hand, waiting. I have always believed a ruling should do more than end noise. It should explain itself to the people who must live with it. Justice that nobody understands leaves a bruise behind. So I chose each sentence like a step across ice. First, I said, the life insurance belongs to Leah Bennett. Her mother named her. That choice was lawful. Gavel. Second, I said, the house is not part of any claim by Thomas Bennett. He signed away ownership years ago. He also waived any later claim. Gavel. Third, I said, Leah Bennett's payments were documented and necessary. Funeral expenses were proper. Mortgage and utility payments preserved the property. No evidence of theft has been shown. Gavel. Fourth, I said, the demand for $247,913 is dismissed. The request to remove Leah Bennett from control of her mother's property is denied. The request by Thomas Bennett for a surviving share is denied. Gavel. I told the clerk to strike the penalties. I told the county office to correct its records by close of business. I told Ms. Doyle to release the hold on the remaining accounts. Then I let the room breathe. I also ordered a written copy sent to the hospice billing office. Fear follows debt even after judgment ends. I did not want some old notice chasing Leah back into panic. Mercy should be clear, not half finished. Leah did not break down the way people imagine. She did not sob into her hands. She stood very still, then sat down because her knees suddenly stopped trusting her. Her fingers opened and closed over the canvas bag strap. She touched her mouth once, then her throat. Then she looked at the empty space beside her chair, like her mother should be there. That hurt more than tears would have. I asked her to come closer to the bench. People forget judges can do that softly. When she stepped forward, I saw the split in her thumb again. I also saw she was trembling from the elbows down. Ms. Bennett, I said, when did you last sleep a full night? The question surprised her. That was the point. Sometimes a human question tells the truth better than any oath. She gave a weak half smile. I don't remember, she said. So I asked my clerk to walk her downstairs after the hearing. There was a grief counselor in the family services office. Then I picked up the faded photograph from the file, Leah at graduation. Anna beside her, thin from treatment, smiling anyway. I handed it back and told Leah, this belongs in your kitchen, not in my record. From the back row, a chair scraped. An older woman stood with both hands on a cane. I recognized her then as the neighbor listed in one affidavit, Mrs. Delgado. Judge, she said, voice shaking, may I say one thing? I allowed it. She looked at Leah, not at me. That girl carried her mother to the bathroom at 2 a.m, she said. She shoveled my walk after her night shift. She drove me to dialysis when my son forgot. And the day Anna died, Leah brought me soup before she let herself eat. Mrs. Delgado sat down before anyone could stop her. If this moment touches something old in you, sit with it. We all need one place where truth can land gently. Even a courtroom can be that place once in a while. Leah left with the photo in one hand and the grocery bag in the other. Thomas Bennett left through the side door. Ms. Doyle stayed behind long enough to apologize to the clerk for missing the attachment. I respected her more for that than for her opening argument. 2 weeks later, the story escaped the courthouse. Not because anyone grandly leaked it. A local reporter heard about the ruling from Mrs. Delgado's nephew. Then the county paper printed a column. The headline was plain. It said a daughter had kept her mother's home after an inheritance fight. But the article included the returned birthday cards. That's what people remembered. By Tuesday, my chambers had 3 bags of mail. Not for me, for Leah. The clerk counted 318 letters, 11 handwritten notes from nurses, and 64 store gift cards. One envelope held $43 in cash. Another held 7 stamps and a note that said, I know what it costs to mail hope. A retired teacher sent Leah her old slow cooker. A roofer offered labor for free. By Friday, a church 3 towns over had raised $18,622. A hardware store pledged supplies worth $2,904. 17 people offered legal help with taxes and title work. 9 offered grief counseling at no charge. A nurse mailed a folded packet on sleep after caregiving. A funeral director sent back part of his fee. 3 teenagers offered to rake leaves after school. One note simply said, your mother was seen. So were you. The county hospice office called next. They had seen the article. Leah had spent 14 months caring for Anna at home. They asked if she would consider training as a patient aide. There were small gifts, too. A woman mailed winter gloves in Leah's size. Someone sent a quilt made from blue fabric because the article mentioned the house color. A little boy drew a porch with a yellow light on. Leah accepted help slowly. That mattered to me. She did not turn pain into performance. She took what she needed, thanked people carefully, and kept moving. The clerk told me she answered many letters by hand. Short notes, careful printing, real stamps. She thanked people for gloves, soup, prayers, gas cards, and time. Even relief can be work when pride is still healing. Mrs. Delgado later wrote me a letter. She said volunteers repaired the porch rail in one Saturday. They fixed the back step, replaced 2 cracked windows, and cleared the gutters. The blue house still looked modest, but no longer looked abandoned. 6 months after the hearing, Leah returned. It was a bright spring morning then. The same door opened. This time, she walked through it like she belonged to the day. She wore a pale green coat that fit her shoulders. Not expensive, just chosen. Her shoes were sensible and both soles sat straight. Her hair was pinned back loosely, not because she had given up, because she no longer needed to hide behind it. Her face had color again. The lines around her mouth had softened. Grief was still there. Grief does not vanish in half a year, but it had stopped eating her from the inside. There was new strength in the way she waited. Before, she had braced for impact. Now she stood balanced on both feet, like she trusted the floor to hold. Her hands told the clearest story. The nail beds had healed. The split thumb was gone. She carried no grocery bag. Instead, she held a canvas tote from the hospice office. Clipped to the strap was a new badge. Leah Bennett, patient care aide trainee. When she reached the rail, she smiled before I did. That had not happened the first time. Then she set something small on council table, a ring of house keys bright from fresh copies. I kept the house, she said. I'm working 4 days a week, and I start evening classes next month. The pride in her voice was careful, almost shy. Then she told me one more thing. She had turned Anna's old sewing room into a quiet room. There was a lamp, a chair, and the graduation photo from the file. She called it her mother's corner. She also brought Mrs. Delgado with her that day. The old woman moved slower now, but she grinned like a child with a secret. Leah had driven her. Some habits of care had survived the worst. Mrs. Delgado told my clerk the mailbox at the Blue House now stayed full, not with threats, with recipes, thank you cards, and class schedules. A life can sound different just by the way its front door closes. Leah asked if I minded one brief question. I told her no. She said, "Do judges ever think about people after they leave?" I laughed a little because the honest answer was every day. I told her some faces stay with me for years, not because the law was difficult, because the cost of being unseen was written all over them. Leah nodded like she understood exactly. She said the hospice patients liked that she never rushed them. She said pain makes time behave strangely. People need someone who knows how long a minute can feel. I wrote that sentence down after she left. Then she handed my clerk a folded card. Inside was a photograph of the porch at dusk. The rail was repaired. A yellow light glowed by the door. On the back, she wrote, "It feels like home again." So let me ask you plainly, when someone has been invisible for years, would your town still know how to see them? Would you? That evening, after calendars were cleared and voices had drained from the hall, I sat alone in my courtroom. Sunlight had left the windows. The wood looked darker then, older, truer. People think this job is about control. It isn't. It's about attention. Who gets it, who loses it, and who has suffered while no one was looking. A file can tell me who signed where. It can tell me what moved from one account to another. It cannot tell me who warmed soup at midnight. It cannot tell me who waited at a window on birthdays. That part arrives in hands, in pauses, in the way a person says gone. It arrives in worn cuffs and returned envelopes. It arrives late sometimes, but when it arrives, I owe it room. I have learned that inheritance is not only money. Sometimes it is debt. Sometimes it is silence. Sometimes it is the damage left by a person who would not stay and would not fully leave. But now and then inheritance is better than that. It is a porch light kept on. A photograph returned to the right hands. A young woman walking back through a courthouse door standing taller than before. The law can guard property. That matters. But if it forgets people, it becomes a lock with no house around it. Justice has to be more alive than that. I have signed orders that changed bank accounts, custody, landlines, and futures. The ink always dries the same way, but the meaning of a ruling lives somewhere else. It lives in what people carry home afterward. I touched the gavel once before leaving. It was cool and smooth from years of use. I thought about how close that room came to rewarding absence. I thought about how many rooms do. Then I turned off the bench light. The courtroom fell quiet. And for one good moment, quiet did not feel empty. It felt earned. Some lives are saved in inches. That is enough. Sometimes it has to be.